Okhódayapi. My name is Barry Hand. I'm the program director for Owámniyomni Okhódayapi. Pidamaya, thank you for joining us for this Lifeways video series. From traditional cooking to the role water plays in our everyday life to our traditional games and how they connect our generations from long ago to today. Continuing the legacy of our ancestors while honoring the land and traditions that sustain us. We hope you enjoy the video and carry these lessons forward in your own journey. So we're going to be tapping maple trees for maple syrup. Maple syrup is an important food source. It was actually maple sugar, which is a far more important food source because you could dry the sugar and it would keep for a very, very long time. But we're going to be making maple syrup. Maple syrup is very important to the tribal nations in the area where you had maple trees, and also box elder was another tree that was tapped by Dakota. Some of the things that we're going to be using, they're modern tapping implements. There was obviously traditional ways that you could do that. When we tap these trees, we always want to remember to think about the weather, to think about the health of the tree. So we're going to be tapping maple trees. We're going to be doing it in the Lake Minnetonka area, and these will actually be sugar maples. You can tap any type of maple tree. Sugar maples do have a higher sugar to water ratio in the sap, so I know that they're a preferred species. When you are tapping, you want to have a tree that's probably 16 inches wide. You don't want to go too small. I've always been an advocate of 1 bucket per tree, because that tree, if it's going to give to you over your lifetime, your family's lifetime, and its lifetime, each little hole is a wound that they're going to heal up, and they heal up real quick. The other thing I will say, when we do tap, when we're done, a lot of times you're like, well, should I put something in the hole? There's still sap coming out. Don't put any dirt or debris in there. What it'll do is you'll infect the tree with a bacteria. So the tree actually will close itself up in about 2 weeks. So we're gonna get ready to tap some maple trees, and we hope to have a lot of fun doing it. To tap trees, it's in the springtime. Well, what does that mean? Late winter, early spring. You can't really put it down on a calendar because winter seems to hang on a little bit longer, or spring will come a little bit sooner. And so what you want is you want to have the daytime temperatures to be right around 40, 40, sometimes 50 degrees. But at night, you want it to be below freezing. The night temperature is going to cool off and go below freezing. And what that'll do is it actually creates almost like a pump effect in the tree trunk. And what it does is it pulls up that moisture, that sap from the roots, and it's sending it up the trunk to the buds, so that way the tree's eventually gonna grow their leaves. And so what we're doing when we tap is we're kind of tapping into that stream of the tree, pulling up those resources from its roots and then making those leaves. You might have a short tapping season, or you might have a longer tapping season. Now, the thing that I will say, your tapping season will end when those trees start to bud out, because what's going to happen is all those sugars are now up in the tree branches to create those leaves, and the sap further down the tree is going to turn bitter. And so you'll know just by tasting it, because if you initially tap, you taste the sap, it's going to taste like sweet water. Once it buds, the water is going to taste bitter. Most of our tribal nations, in fact, all of them that I know of, are First Nations people. There's a reciprocal relationship that we have. And what does that mean? Well, it's a relationship of respect and honoring. When we tap these trees, that tree has agency and is considered a being, a person unto itself. And sometimes we forget about that. And when we are going to tap these trees, we're doing something a little invasive, and we're taking something from them, which is a sap, and we're going to make this sugar and or this syrup. And so we leave an offering for those trees as a way to show respect and homage. That could be a little food offering, that could be tobacco, but to tell that tree thank you for giving of itself. So some of the Dakota language aspects of this that I really want to point out is one really important word, Čháŋhasaŋ. Čháŋhasaŋ is a Dakota word for sugar, but I want to break that down a little bit. Čháŋhasaŋ is talking about chá, a tree, and haŋpi, a juice. So think about that. So as we are talking about Čháŋhasaŋ, we're talking about the sap of the tree. That's our Dakota word for sugar. I really want to point that part out as far as the Dakota word for sugar, or this would also be considered chahumpy, this syrup, because it's actually still humpy. It's still a juice, a tree that's boiled down tree juice. That's our word for sugar, is chahumpy, and that comes from the maple tree. One of the ways we would say maple tree in Dakota is Čháŋhasaŋ. Čháŋhasaŋ is cha, a tree, a ha is a skin, the outer side, and saŋ, kind of light. And so that's one of the ways to say a maple tree. And we actually have a city in Minnesota that's mispronounced as Čháŋhasaŋ. It's actually Čháŋhasaŋ. That's not a Scandinavian word for son of Čháŋhan. It's Čháŋhasaŋ. And so Čháŋhasaŋ is one of the ways that we would say maple tree. And so when you're out there and you're in the woods and you're getting ready to tap, there's beautiful words that you can incorporate into your daily life while you're gathering this gift from the Creator. And I would encourage you, the next time you are using any kind of sugar and you say chahumpy, that you really think of maple trees and that connection to the word in Dakota. So you're going to need some tools. This is pretty simple to do, but there's going to be some important tools that you're going to need. One of the things that I would encourage you to have is a little hatchet with a flat back or a small hammer. You're going to need a drill and a drill bit. The drill bit size that you need depends on the size of spile. Now, what is a spile? A spile is something like this. Now, you can get these aluminum spiles. You can get plastic spiles. You can do drip buckets, drip bags. You can do interconnected drip hoses, but everything starts with this spile. And so the way I like to do it is I like to use aluminum buckets. When you're getting ready to make your hole for your spile, a couple of things you want to think about placement. Probably about just around waist height, between that 3 and 4 foot range. I usually like to put my taps on the south facing side of the tree. Based on the temperature, the amount of sap you're going to collect is going to vary. Some days you're going to have full buckets. Some days you might have just a little bit in the bottom of that bucket. And when you drill in, go about a 1/2 inch in your drill, you want to put it at a slight angle. Why do we do that? Well, obviously gravity, and that gravity allows that to drip out. Any drill will work, but one of the tricks that I like to do is on that drill bit, I like to tie some tape so that way when I'm putting it into the tree, I know where to stop. I always like to put the tape around the drill bit, right around that 1.5 inch mark, so that way we're in that tree. Take the back of that hatchet or that little hammer and you just give it a couple good taps until it seats really firmly in there. You want to go maybe about 1.25 inches into the tree. There's also this little hanger. So what you do with the hanger is when you put this into the tree, you got to make sure you put this little hanger here, and each one's a little different, so you got to kind of look at your equipment. And then my bucket's going to hang off of this. So it's going to sit firmly. And as you can see, there's kind of a spoon shape on the end of the spile. It's going to drip into the bucket. Now, this bucket's open. You want to have a cover for your bucket because there are things that like this syrup like us, the mice, the chipmunks, the squirrels. Because it's spring, the invertebrates are waking up. A lot of times what you have is the caps or from buds from other trees that'll fall in there. So you still want debris in there. So at some point you got to start your boiling, and you're also tapping, collecting, and boiling at the same time. As you're boiling down your syrup, whatever fire source you're going to use, I tend to prefer the wood fire method when I can be there. If I can't be there nonstop, I use an LP burner. Some folks will invest in an evaporator. You could do that. You boil it outside, but you can get that boil started. And while you're going and you have your big boiling kettle, it doesn't have to be a fancy copper kettle. It can be an aluminum, big giant soup pot that you use at home. It doesn't have to be fancy. But what you do is as it's boiling down, you are going to be adding more sap. Now, when you're doing that, you're going to want to strain that. So when we are taking these sap collection buckets and we're putting them in a 5-gallon pail, what I like to do is run a sieve through it. So I'm going to pour this into my 5-gallon, almost like a colander. It's going to get any like little tree debris that has gone in there. But when I take the sap from the 5-gallon pails and I pour it into my boiling kettle to reduce it, I usually pour it through a cheesecloth. And what that does is it gets out finer things. So as you're boiling it down in your kettle or your pot, you can keep adding sap to that because all you're doing is you're just adding more water content and more water content. You can keep that going for an awfully long time. If you decide to get an evaporator, they actually have really neat little deals where there's a spigot and all this other stuff. And you boil that down to a syrup. It's going to taste like syrup. There is little instruments you can get that'll tell you when it's ready. I use my taste buds and the consistency. The other thing I'll say, as you're boiling down, it's not going to be thick like your log home syrup. It's maple syrup, so it's actually going to be a little bit more watery. It's not going to look like corn syrup in that bottle. It's going to be a little bit more watery, so you really got to trust the process. Here's the thing. If you think you've boiled it down too far, how do you fix that? Well, you got two choices. You can boil it down to sugar, which is a little bit of a different process that we're not going to touch on today, or you can add a little bit of water. That's the beautiful thing about this process. You can boil it too far down, but if you add a little bit of water, all you're doing is rehydrating that and upping the water content to where it needs to be. I like to finish my syrup on the stove in the kitchen. Now, when you're boiling sap, it creates a lot of condensation in your house. If you try to do all of this from scratch in your house is going to be damp for days. So I'd encourage you to do it outside. But I like to finish my syrup in the house. Couple reasons. I have a little bit more control. I have the kitchen around me. And then of course, I'm gonna can it. The thing about syrup is it'll keep in the fridge for a while. It'll keep for a few weeks without a canning process or something like that. But I like to can it, keep it a little bit longer. If you're gonna can, I would follow the water bath canning method. It'll keep your syrup good for a very long time. I really want to thank everybody for watching this video about how we made our maple syrup. There's always things that you can do different or things that you would prefer. This is a way to do things, and this isn't the way to do things. So this is how we did it. And however you and your family decide to do it, I know you'll do it in a good way. A couple of things to remember: involve the family, involve everybody, because it's fun. And make sure that you eat well and have a big breakfast or big feast to honor that syrup. Make sure you thank those trees and thank creation for providing that food and medicine for us. But I really want to thank you all. In these video series, almost all of these things that we're putting together, we can do in the home. And that was kind of the intention of the video series, was to try to share some of these things so that you, your own family, whether you're already connected, reconnecting, or just honoring some of these values, you can do it and express it in your way, how your family sees fit in your home, based on the traditions that your community or your family has.